G'day and welcome to the Campfire Project. And today I'm here with, first of all, Elise Peck, who is a love, relationship and intimacy coach. How are you, Elise?
I'm doing really well, thanks, Alan. How are you going?
Very good, thanks. Welcome to the Campfire.
Thank you.
And Ian Westmoreland, who is the founder of Mentoring Men. G'day, Ian. How are you?
Hey, Alan. Well, I've got a man cold, but I'm okay. It's great to be on this panel discussion. So thanks for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. And then Nick Bell, who is the owner and operator of SD Consulting Australia. How are you, Nick?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you. And good morning to everybody on the panel and anybody who might be listening in later.
Excellent. Now, we were talking about a subject for this one, treating everybody in our lives with dignity and respect, and how that's the real measure of a man. And I think that's a brilliant conversation to be starting with. And I was wondering, Nick, would you like to start us off on the conversation?
Well, yeah, I would. And just very, very quickly, in 30 seconds or less, my background is, as of March this year, I was 30 years in the fire service as a watch commander, responding to and taking operational command of critical incidents. And it was a heavily male-dominated workplace, to say the least. In the last 10 years, there's been some changes. And let me say, for the positive, I've really struggled with what I call a lot of macho BS in workplaces, and I find it, to be frank, to be quite tiresome. And there's a couple. It's not because I'm trying to be noble or trying to sort of ingratiate myself with the 50% of people that occupy the planet with me as well. It's more about saying that because we haven't, I think some men, in some respects, don't quite have the haven't quite got the message, the program, that when we treat everybody with dignity and respect, we are, therefore, that's how we demonstrate who we are as men. We don't demonstrate who we are as men by, buying a big fast car or a house or so on. These are, of course, wonderful things, and love to have a dozen of them, and it's all good. Let's tick that box. But that's not how we demonstrate. So how do we demonstrate fatherhood? It's how we treat our children. How do we demonstrate being a man? It's how we treat every woman in our lives, whether it be a transactional meeting as a waitress brings you a coffee and we say, thank you very much, I appreciate that, up to and including the woman that we're married to, and we treat them with dignity and respect. That doesn't mean that we can't have robust conversation and disagreements, but at the absolute base of everything must be dignity and respect. If we haven't got that, we are by definition undermining ourselves as men. And once men understand that concept, they would take a step back, but they undermine themselves and their position in life, generally, professionally and personally, when they denigrate or try to pull down women. That's my 2 to 3 minute pitch.
I feel that's very true, because when you're rubbishing somebody else, it's not a reflection of them, it's a reflection of you and who you are. And
it speaks volumes of who you are and what you're about. And as I say, I mean, I always qualify what I say. I'm not sitting in judgment. What I'm saying is we can have robust disagreements. In fact, I think that that's critically important, but we go soft on the person and hard on the issue. And if we don't get that concept right, we're kidding ourselves. And I've done a lot of work in this space. Just very quickly, I have done quite a bit of work with in domestic violence with White Ribbon and a number of other things, certainly in the Northern Territory. So I have, my leanings are towards that, to educating men to say, but hang on a second, guys, let's take a rethink on how we're treating the women in our lives.
I'd say, Ian, that you're working with men and you're seeing, they're going through hardships and everything else. So you're seeing a lot of this in their behaviours as well, wouldn't you?
I have. It's interesting experience for me, because we used to ask the men, the mentors who engaged in our program, to sign the White Ribbon pledge, and then one day a guy refused to sign it on principle, and I asked him why, and he said, well, it's gender based. And to be honest, I've come around to that way of thinking. I agree with all of the values that Nick was purporting, couldn't agree more, but I wouldn't bring gender into it. I think it's, you know, I was at a presentation a few months ago on domestic violence, and a woman got up and talked about it and almost demonized. It was all about men committing domestic violence on women, which is an appalling thing. I get that on record. And then said, so you women need to ring 1800 respect. And I really struggled at the end because I thought there's a number of key things. We've got guys in our program who've been beaten up by women, right? And they're too embarrassed to raise it. And secondly, if there's people thinking of committing domestic violence or committing domestic violence, I wouldn't demonize them. I think we should be trying to support them and try and help them and all that sort of stuff. So I personally would, and I've been moved by this, I would remove the gender. I agree that, like, clearly the vast majority of physical domestic violence is men against women, and it's appalling. And my wife and I have sponsored a book aimed at reducing that sort of thing. But I would take the gender out of it because to me, it's not a gender specific thing, issue or problem. It's as humans, we train our mentors on a thing called unconditional positive regard, which is basically you put aside all behavior of the person that you're looking at and just and you see them in that way rather than this judgmental thing. And I think we should be trying to support, encourage, get around the people who commit this. I think the separation is sometimes is the only way, but in many cases, it's far smarter to be preventative and trying to address the root cause of these issues. You know, it's mentoring men is all about prevention to try and prevent people getting to a crisis situation. So so I don't try to be controversial, but it's just a little journey I've been on, and that's where I see it.
Yeah, because the hashtag We Together, which is a campfire, which it was founded on, was all about removing the gender issues. Because I know that with domestic violence, the stats are saying that 1 out of every 3 victims are male. And then secondly, that in lesbian relationships, the violence is just as high as it is in heterosexual, which means it's not a gender problem. It's more a society problem, more around self-esteem and other issues. And again, beating them up, well, if you beat a bully up, that's how they became a bully in the first place. And so finding the cause behind it is what we need to be doing. Elise, from a feminine point of view, what's your views on this?
Sorry if my internet's a little bit dodgy. It went in and out then, so I only heard part of Ian's, but I really loved that point about, and I loved Nicholas's point about how we treat others is a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. And that's why it really is a measure of a person, whether it's a man or a woman. The way that we treat others is a reflection of our own inner voice. And that's why you can measure a person based on how they're treating others. And something that's coming up for me is, it might not appeal to everyone, but is the spiritual sort of view of oneness, that the other person is you. And when you disadvantage another, you kind of, it's really, you're hurting yourself. And I also thought of the thought, what Sally says about Susie says more about Sally than it does about Susie. It's how we treat others is really a reflection. From the feminine point of view, if I was to bring a feminine and masculine dance into this, and particularly something that I work on is creating good chemistry in relationships, because when the chemistry is solid and it's sort of it becomes a bit of a panacea. Not always, there's a lot of other stuff in there, but for a lot of other stuff. Now, for a feminine energy to feel like she can let go in the presence of a masculine, he needs to have quite a steady, stable energy. And if you look at the alpha male of any species, they're the calm leader. They are the calm leader that, treats everything. They're the fearless leader that isn't looking down, or they're leading by example. And it's actually the ones at the bottom of the pack that kind of attack and they go like that. So actually it's a sign of a very steady alpha male to be the calm person that treats others with dignity and respect. And ultimately it comes down to, because he trusts himself and is solid in himself, he doesn't need to pip other people down. There's a thought that when someone is not respecting someone, or they're looking down on someone on an unconscious level, they actually feel like that person is above them, that person is superior to them, and therefore they're actually trying to pip them down. So a sign of you know, your relationship with yourself is if you're not intimidated by someone who's doing well and you don't feel like you have to pip them down, it's ultimately because you're feeling solid within yourself. Bullying or trying to overpower another is really a sign of a sense of powerlessness within you. And when you feel powerful and solid in yourself, you don't need to try to overpower or overcome or attack down or be someone else. So this really, I definitely agree that being respectful and having dignity for everyone is a sign of your inner strength, of your character. And ultimately what that provides for the feminine is she feels like she can let go in the presence, that this man can handle her emotions, her feelings, and it's a safe place for her. A woman can really only open in her heart when she feels safe. And it's this dignity and respect and this sense of stability from the masculine energy that makes a feminine feel like she can open her heart and let go and be in the presence with comfort and safety. So definitely resonate with everything being said here, and totally agree that it's definitely a measure of a person. And when you're with a woman or the feminine energy, she's noticing how you treat everyone. It's not just how you treat her. If you treat her well, but then you treat someone else like dirt, she's going to think, is that me down the track? Is that how you're going to, is that really, like, is that what's going on? If you treat the waiter like that, you're looking down upon people. Whereas if you have this energy of we're all unique beings and we're all equal and we all deserve the same respect, it shows a humility. And yeah, and that's very attractive, and it shows a confidence.
Yeah, I love the way you described the alpha male, because you showed them about being you know, calm and in their own space, whereas a lot of the descriptions I hear when I hear some groups talking about the alpha male, it's more about the warrior. It's the one who's, you know, fighting the fight and everything else, and it's like, well, just like that, beating their chest. Now, the alpha male can take that role, but the rest of the time, they've got that connection. They've got that peacefulness about them. They've got that confidence that everybody feels safe to be around that. You don't have to be waving weapons to let everybody feel safe. If someone's waving weapons, even if it's against somebody else, I'm worried about what's going to happen.
Confidence is a calm, steady presence. You know you can handle whatever comes to you. If you imagine the leader of the wolf pack, he doesn't need to fight all the others because he knows he's the strongest. If someone comes up, he can just pop them back in their place. So he doesn't have to be trying to take anyone else down because it's that assured confidence. And so being respectful and having dignity is actually a sign of self-esteem, of confidence, of belief in yourself that you can handle what comes to you. So it's a very attractive quality, and it really is an alpha quality. Confidence is quiet, insecurity is loud.
We had a men's forum last week where Professor Liz Murphy spoke on the importance of fatherhood, especially in the prenatal and antenatal period. And one of the things that she brought out was the importance of the calmness that a male can provide early on, both in the womb and then afterwards. And it just, one of the things I hadn't thought of, but it's a key role there because, yeah, so in line with what Elise was saying there.
And as you say, it's a great quality, because I know a couple of weeks ago I became a grandfather for the 6th time again, a little granddaughter, and I watched my my oldest boy, the father, with the baby, and the calmness and everything. I thought, where do you get all that from? Yes, it's his 2nd child. You know, Daniel's now 5 years old, and but his calmness with the baby, it's something that just flowed naturally, and the baby was at peace all the time. I don't think I heard it cry once in all the time I was at the hospital. So as you say, and that you know, what do you call it? The energy that we put out is so important in how it affects other people, because it is very much a statement of who we are.
And it's a sign of solid emotional regulation, that you can have your feelings and then you can be in command of them. So if the baby's not crying, if the baby's crying, you can witness that and not be the emotion, just witness it instead of, so it's a sign that you've got sort of a security within yourself and you're not being moved by your triggers, which on a strange side topic, people that speak about abundance and business success often refer to, you need to have command over your emotions and be a stable energy. And same in business, you know, my husband's in this high flying sort of corporate role. And when he joined it, someone said, he asked someone, you know, what's the key to being successful here? And they said, the people that get ahead are the ones that just stay calm no matter what. So in business, in finances, in relationships, the ability to have command over your emotions, stay steady, and therefore move from that place that reflects the dignity and respect you have for yourself and your self-esteem with others is an incredible quality and very telling of what's going on inside you.
Not always easy to achieve, though.
No, not at all. No, but we're talking about what's the measure. It's not easy. Yeah, no, yeah.
Because Nick, when you were talking before about firefighting and those emergency situations and everything else, at those particular times, that's another important time to be able to have those skills, wouldn't it?
Well, you're very right, but what Elise said there really resonates with me. Unless you, and I did a lot of instructing as I came through, and certainly in the last 15 years for our new and emerging leaders and our new recruits and so on in the critical decision-making space, and what to do and how to think when you respond to critical incidents. And we're talking about people screaming, you know, it's where I say that people scream, you know, cry, bleed and die. And it's at those times, in actual fact, the trick, it's not a trick, I use that word a bit loosely, but the idea is that the higher consequence environment you're in, the cooler and calmer you have to be. And it's in actual fact, so it's a complete reverse. So when we respond to critical incidents and we see people smashed or lost limbs or bleeding out or the screaming, and you know, you hear the screaming for days, weeks, months and years later, when you hear and see that and you would experience it, and the smells are, you know, it just stays with you. What happens is you have to actually be able to reverse engineer yourself as a human being, because everything you feel and see and hear causes revulsion to withdraw. So you have to be able to sort of reverse that and say, right, I'm staying cool and calm. This is what's happening. I actually, when I responded to these, all of the jobs I ever responded to, and I was always operational till the day I resigned because I loved operations. It was an environment to test myself. The idea was that you would, in actual fact, arrive on scene and say, well, this is as bad as it can get. It can only get better from here. I have to reverse engineer everything I'm feeling, seeing, hearing, and I have to actually be able to add value from this point onwards. So it's really that, you know, the higher the conflict, and you could call it conflict, the calmer you have to be. And at least use the words calm. And I will pick up on something that Ian said. I completely agree with what you're saying about gender. I have no issues with that. I can only ever speak as a man, however, and my perspective as a man. And so, and domestic violence is sort of part of it. But what I'm saying is, leaving that aside, I'm talking about all dignity and respect coming from all men to everybody that they deal with, other men as well. So I agree with the gender-based thing, leaving that out. But we can measure then leadership or courage under fire by, once again, what Elise says, this calm and sort of the way that we manage ourselves. So I always used to say to the guys coming through, listen, I don't care how big your muscles are, what you look like in front of a mirror. I don't care what calendar you've been in. I don't care anything about any macho BS that you've got going on. I'm telling you that unless you can control yourself, the task, the team, and the way forward, this job is not for you. Go and, do something else, not to denigrate any other jobs, but this job, specifically this job is not for you. This cool heads and steady hands are required under enormous pressure and stress. And so if we take that to the household, where we encounter, the lovely women in our lives, then, when financially strapped, this, that, everything going wrong, it is at that point it is at that point that we must display the greatest calmness and leadership possible. And I have to say, and I'll conclude now with my little 2-minute rant, but it's actually there on the fire ground that I learnt these lessons in technicolor and in graphic detail. You know, as somebody was screaming and dying and I held their hand, lessons were learned. And these lessons you can translate, and that's what I've been able to do very successfully, thankfully, to the boardroom or to business or to work or to men and working in that space.
Right. I guess we're talking about treating people with respect. One of the challenges I guess I used to have was this inherent judgmental thing. You know, you'd see someone homeless or in the street or unemployed or alcoholic, and I guess in ignorance there was this attitude there, which I think is fairly common in society. But this journey that I've been on, in fact, at one point attempting to get I had a relatively senior position in IT. I was bored after I retired and I looked to try and get an admin job in a factory, and I couldn't believe how hard it was, and ultimately I didn't get that job. And then I'm never going to say again, if someone really wants to work, they can get a job, because that's just simply not true in many cases. The other thing is other lessons are around, we had a number of guys who'd taken drugs coming into the program, and I've never taken a legal drug. I had no idea. So I started investigating, and this guy one of the mentors who'd taken drugs before, he said to me, Ian, if you want to reduce illegal drug usage, stop sexual abuse. And I thought, what? And then it occurred to me, and often what we see is the symptom, and there's a reason. We haven't been through that person's life. What right have we got to judge the decisions they make? And we had an alcoholic apply recently, and we've got a social worker who works with us, and he had a totally different attitude to it. And the point he was making is that the DNA or whatever it is in a percentage of people is that if they are exposed to alcohol, which they're promoted constantly through media, if they're exposed to alcohol, there's a really high chance they're going to become an alcoholic. And it wasn't in any way judging this person. It was like this total empathy for the person. And it takes a while for me, these lessons, and maybe these lessons need to be wider spread. Yeah, so there's reasons why people are maybe behaving in ways that we think aren't good, but don't judge them, get out there and support. And maybe the domestic violence thing which clearly is an appalling behaviour, but maybe we should be trying to address the root cause of whatever that is and support them with a view to addressing. So.
Yeah, I agree with that, because quite often we're looking at, as you said, the symptom, and that's all we seem to do. And medical systems, everything focus on fixing a symptom, but never looking at the cause. So I got bullied all the way through the school, and I hated bullies. And then one of the men that I have a great deal of respect for here in the Campfire Project was an appalling bully at school when he was a kid. But I heard his story of what he went through in the background. You know, brothers who committed suicide because of the bullying that they all got from their parents. And so once I understood him and then got to know the man himself, yeah, I class him as a good friend, somebody I quite respect, especially with the work he's doing today. Talk about doing penance for anything he might have done as a kid. And, you know, taking that time out, getting past ourselves, as you said, Elise, being calm enough to be able to not trying to control your emotions or put your emotions down, but not let the emotions control you. To have that balance of it, to spend some time to understand the other person more fully and understanding why they do what they do. We talk about, look at a lot of Aboriginals, and we talk about their alcohol and other things like that. But, you know, I was talking to one of the aunties the other day, and as she said, well, she was part of the stolen generation. When a child is stolen, the parents, they're at a loss. They're totally at a loss. And the alcohol becomes a pain numbing process, as a medication. And so all of a sudden, then all we see is the alcohol or alcohol abuse. So we're not looking or taking the time out. We've got this arrogance that we know everything. And we're not taking the time out to look at the other people, to understand them at a deeper level.
This reminds me of this Brene Brown. Everyone know about who Brene Brown. She says, if you don't like someone, come closer. Understand them more. If you don't like someone, you know, basically get to know them more. The other thing that's coming up for me is there's this guy called Tim Bell. He's very, very successful, you know, and I like to look at clues with people that have got a certain level of success and things that they say. And something that he said is that everyone is your superior in some way. If only you're willing to sit down, kneel, bow down and listen. And that is that we all have a different zone of genius and we all have our different thing to offer. And just because someone isn't smart in your way or on your topic, you know, it doesn't mean you can't have respect for them. You haven't discovered what their genius is. Everyone has got something to teach you. And if you approach everyone with curiosity and wanting to know more, and look below the surface, there is wisdom and there is gold there. And so if you have that, and I love that that's someone very successful, very, you know, because he could look down and say, well, I got here because I'm better than everyone else. But if you look at the mindsets of people that are great leaders, they believe, well, I'm no better than anyone else. I applied a set of habits and everyone else is still a genius in their own way. And so yeah, I think that's a great indicator of how some people think. And I
think if you get to those people who are like that and you ask them for advice, they're none too happy to actually help you and advise and give you, you know, guidance on how to get to where they are. That shows their humility, but also shows that they're you know, that calmness, as you said before, within who they are themselves. And so the ones who can help other people the most are the people who have, you know, understand themselves to that level.
Something else that's coming up for me is, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the top level is actually being of service. It's actually where you get to the point where you want to serve and help others. And that is the ultimate sort of dignity and respect for others, is when you're looking at another and you're wondering, how can I be of service? How can I, you know, when you're looking at people from that point of view of how can I serve, then you're going to have dignity and respect for everyone you come into contact with, if you're having that level. And that shows that you're at a certain level of self-actualization. You're at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if we're measuring people and saying who's more enlightened or conscious or at the top of the people that get there are the people that decide to serve others instead of just serving themselves.
Yeah, because we look at a lot of people, like those jobs that we don't like doing ourselves, we want other people to do. Well, they're doing that because they like it and they're better at it than us. So straight away, we are there in, if you're going to look at superior and inferior, we are inferior on that particular task to them. So to look down at our nose at them because they're doing a task that we're not capable of doing, it's a bit hypocritical. It's a bit strange because, Ian.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what Nick used to do, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't remain. I don't think I could remain calm, and just the horrific things that you would have seen and support, and I assume lives saved and all that. But it would just be incredibly hard, physically, emotionally, and I don't know if they provided the support back in the earlier days. But yeah, I just take my hat off to all the frontline staff, particularly fireys and paramedics and stuff like that. So yeah, amazing stuff.
Well, thanks for your vote of confidence, but this, you know, I suppose I look at it like this. I did some extraordinary things, but I'm an extremely ordinary person. And remember too that when I look at things like courage and so on, and other people have talked about this, and I was standing in front of 300 army officers, and they were talking about this thing called courage and so on. But remember that I had 5 fire trucks and 35 firefighters, and we were all well trained. We had equipment and everything like that. I'll tell you what courage is. Courage is a single mother or single father getting up every day, going to work, getting the kids off to school, and telling them that they love them. Now that's courage. And then going to work, and then a second job, and then a third job. And that is courage. And, you know, these sorts of things. Ian, trust me, I really appreciate your vote of confidence there, mate. It's true. I'm not for a second stepping away from that. But it brings me back to this, this thing about dignity and respect, which I think is critically important. And something you said at the start, it actually transcends then all of these boundaries because about gender or this or that. Because I've given talks on all sorts of things, and I've said to people, and people get me in to write policies and procedures and do this and that. In actual fact, you don't actually even need a HR department. You can throw all the policies and procedures away. In fact, you don't even need a police force. You don't even need it. You can throw everything, all gone. If everybody treated everybody with dignity and respect, straight away you wipe out crime. Secondly, all of a sudden no one's trying to sell drugs to kids or this or that or that. All of a sudden there is no such thing as disrespecting male or female in the anywhere. I mean, that's all we need to do. It's as simple as that. And with a lot of things that I found, standing on the side of the road at critical incidents, the answer is simple, but it's never easy. It's never, ever easy. It is always simple. And I used to almost implore the new firefighters. I did police, fire, ambulance. I did a lot of all sorts of instructing in this space. And I used to say to people, you don't even have to worry about reading the policies and procedures. Just be respectful. What does it matter? We are all of us are accidents of birth. I am this tall. I was born at this time. I just turned up, for God's sake. What does it matter what my skin color is or my gender or anything? Who cares? And that's why things like racism and so on, they as a concept, they basically fall off the table. They don't exist because the dignity and respect we show people transcends then that. Because actually, what do I care where you were born and what color skin you have? Or I don't care. And so that's my sort of, and I try every day. I'm not perfect, but the judgmental thing I think is really, Ian, that really resonates with me. We're all judgmental to some extent, but to be aware of being judgmental, mate, I think that's the trick. And say, whoa, hang on, where did I get that from?
Yeah, we've got a strong focus at the moment. We've just won a contract to promote mentoring into the CALDS, the culturally and linguistically diverse community.
Wow.
And in fact, we've just written a diversity and inclusion HR policy, but it's more aimed at, there's difference in, we learn a bit of this stuff, like in our culture, you look someone in the eyes. When I think it's when Captain Cook went to the Pacific Islands, the white Englishmen reported these guys were really dodgy because they wouldn't look at them, and the natives reported these guys couldn't be trusted because they looked, So I guess it's just increasing this understanding across the different cultures and sexualities and stuff like that. So it's a great learning curve, and we are passionate about supporting those people because historically they've been disadvantaged by the prejudices are out there, even government policy. You look at homosexuality, and it used to be, it was a jailable crime. People got a criminal. I can't believe this. Indigenous people never got a vote in their country till 1975 when Whitlam came in. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's still wrong. We don't even recognise Indigenous people in our national anthem. I think it's totally unacceptable. So I guess, Nick, you're talking about changing the attitude of the man, and absolutely, but I think there needs to be some stuff going on. You look in America where the racial division is still, we were over there Montana, we were over there, and it's still a huge part of their life. I can't believe it. Racial prejudice might got to be one of the most stupid things. It makes no sense from any point of view. It's the top 1 or 2 millimeters of your skin, and anyway, I've got off track there, but I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to get us to the point, which is what this talk is about. But I guess all people agreeing is the starting point. But we need to get other people on board, and we need to change the world. We need to get governments. We need to get community groups changing.
Yeah, as you say, it's when we have those respectful conversations, when we actually understand the other people. As I say, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Let's take that time out. As Elise was saying, get closer to the person. That way you can understand, and while you're standing back, you've got that division, you're just creating further problems. But the more that we can understand each other, when you're doing that, there is no threat. Because when we're standing back, that's when the threats are, because we have uncertainty. We shouldn't have an issue with gender. We shouldn't have an issue with anything. As I said, that's why the hashtag We Together. I didn't care about religion, culture, any background, colour of skin, anything else, gender, all of it. Treat each other with respect. And people say, oh, but that's so hard. As you said before, it's a simple thing, but it is hard to actually do. It's not an easy thing for people to do. But we've had well over 215 one-on-one conversations. We've had all the panel discussions. It's about the 85th one we've had. We've had Facebook Lives and everything else. And in just over 2 years, because we started this in July 2018, I should say, we've been going now for that period of time and not one disrespectful conversation between anybody. No one's been rude to anyone. All the genders, everything else, there hasn't been anything there. So it can be done.
Yeah.
It's up to each one of us.
I guess one of the things that's helped me, I guess as a younger man, I was far more confident with my opinions, It was black, white, right, wrong. And I have this model that I now use, and where there's a wire that goes between extreme points, yes, no, black, white, or whatever. But the wire never gets to either point. It's short. And there's a bead on the wire. And then as you take more information in, you move that bead. And on whatever issue you want to pick. But I'm seeing what's happening through social media is that people identify with a group who support their view, and they almost exclusively hear from that view. So the left gets further left, the right gets further right. And what we're talking about here, this respectful conversation, the ability to disagree. If they just had the concept of the bead and were prepared to listen to the other side, it's really sad what's happening in America. They're just gone poles apart, someone was saying the other day, there's really no such thing as a fact. I think if we get this attitude, this is the way it is, and I'm not going to listen to anyone else about that, and I think that's not a good attitude.
Yeah. So the last panel discussion we just did was on why is it we have to be right? That comes down to lack of self-esteem, lack of confidence, all the negative stuff about us. And we're not, we're focused on that, which is getting more of that thing. So what you focus on, you get more of, and we're not focusing on what is positive.
Yeah, let the other person, even if they're not right, let them go. Why which is why we have to point out to them.
Yeah, well, I ask them, well, why do you feel that way? Explain to me, let me understand how you think, because I might appreciate something in that. I might get another view of my own. And in that polite conversation, there's also a chance that they may do the same thing as well. Elise.
One of the keys to respectful relationships is actually validation. So you don't have to agree with what another person says, but there's these psychologists, Harville Hendricks and Helen McKelly Hunt, that spoke about creating secure attachment in relationships, which when you're securely attached, you're secure in yourself, you're going to move out into the world with respect and dignity. And they talked about this dialogue that you can introduce into relationships that provides that space. And the key steps are mirror back another person. Someone talks, mirror them back so that they feel heard. And then validate them. You don't have to agree with someone else, but just saying, I can see that why that makes sense to you. What you're saying based on everything you said, that makes sense to me, that's how you would see things. And so you don't have to be right. You suspend your need to be right, and you don't even need to have an opinion. You're just letting this person be seen and heard. And that is a way you can respect someone, by taking yourself and your need to be the most smartest person in the conversation, and actually making the conversation about serving another, helping them feel seen and heard. Something else that's coming up for me with Ian's point, I love with the bead, because that kind of actually tracks back to a spiritual concept. There's this thing called the Great Tao, the Tao Te Ching. It's as old as time, and it actually talks about in all things, stay at the center of all things. So, and actually I've heard this thing that often when we're learning something, we'll swing like a pendulum. Oh, I'm on that team. And then we'll explore the other side. And eventually we come back to the center. And the center is sort of the wise point where you're open to the fact that you don't know everything. And that was something I discovered, was the more I learned, the more I realized I don't know. So I thought I was so smart when I was 18. And then I went to law school. And so I went from being like the top of my school to now being in the top percentage of people that went to law school. And now I sat in that class and I realized, oh my gosh, I thought I was smart. And now in this room, I don't. And it's like the more you think, the more you learn, the more you're like, I know nothing. I know nothing. And that is actually that humility and having that belief that there's always more to learn allows you to turn up and respect everyone else, because you don't think I'm the expert on everything. You're there, you're curious, you're open, and that gives respect, and that's a sign of humility and a sign of someone that once you're set and certain on something, you've closed your mind. And an open mind, a curious mind. I mean, there's Albert Einstein, anyone that has found out amazing things says that they were fiercely curious. They just were so curious. And so if we approach each other with curiosity and a willingness to understand more, it puts us in this space of dignity and respect.
Yeah. Can I come back to this this disagreement that people have? One of our mentors is a funeral celebrant, and in many cases there's been a death. Obviously that's why he's there, but the family's been disconnected. There's been something that's happened that's lasted all the way through. I mean, how tragic is that? So that even though they won't even talk to each other at the funeral. So it's these things which could be over trivial matters or whatever, or there's this need to prove right or whatever. It's just split a family with terrible consequences. It's how important is that compared to a life of sharing love and all that? I don't get it. It's just really sad. And it maybe if we gave up the need to be right all the time and just look for opportunities to heal the wounds or whatever.
Yeah, because when we're angry at other people, as they say, it's like taking poison, hoping the other person will die.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do you any good at all. One of the philosophies I heard a long time ago, which actually by a coach from, excuse me, UCLA in America. His word was, the most valuable thing you'll ever learn is the next thing you learn after you think you know everything. So always being open to learn all the time. And with that, you do listen to other people. Now, as I keep saying, my students have been everything from children, the youngest of children, through to the eldest of adults. And everybody's got something to share. And even, Robert Kiyosaki with his rich dad and poor dad, his own father and his mate's father, who was a billionaire. He learned from both of them. We can learn from everybody. And it's only time we learn is when we take that time to get out of our ego and listen. We're using terms like, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to learn from everybody in the room. So we're saying all that, but yet everybody still wants to gets upset when they're not the smartest person in the room. It's like, come on, guys, we're crazy.
I've just noticed my name on the Zoom screen. I forgot to change it from the last course. So
yeah, for those that are watching this, it won't come out on the recording because the name's underneath it disappears. But Ian says, learn something new.
No idea we were going to go down that path.
But I think we always do. So if we were looking at, and because there are a lot of things, I know in my own head what goes on, there are things that I'll talk about and then I'll do something completely different, or I'll view something with a completely different mindset. And I wonder why, sometimes it's so hard to get that balance point and be steady and in your, right with your emotions, whatever they are. And so how do we deal with some of that stuff? What sort of particular things, if I can ask you, put you on the spot here, what have you actually been through? What have you realized about yourself that you have been able to improve? And what sort of advice would you give to the people who are listening who may be in the same situation where you were at that time? Nick.
Me?
Yeah, if I could.
I look, yeah, so a lot of lost opportunities. I see that, and very, you know, I look at myself in that respect. My father was an alcoholic, and everything that came with that, and being the eldest son, I was on the receiving end of that from a physical abuse point of view. So that's, you know, that's a tough learning environment. But going into the fire service too at 24 years of age, you know, not really having guides, coaches, mentors, and so on, and not from a very formative age as well. It's not actually about what we say, although that's critically important, and we have to have the right words and so on sometimes. And I'm not devaluing the value of that. I think it's about role modeling. So how does my daughter know what a father acts like, or how does my daughter know what a husband acts like, or how does my daughter know what a brother acts like and a son acts like? So she will learn that I don't have to say a word. I have to role model. And that is much more powerful. When I speak, I'm trying to convince people or trying to persuade them and stuff. And that's somewhat, it's a transitory thing. Role modeling is much more about influence. And if you want to influence people, this is what I have found working in a heavily male-dominated environment, and also, you know, a lot of feedback from our female firefighters too, which is really good. You know, thank goodness they came in probably later in their career. They probably saw that, you know, where I learned a lot better lessons. But it's about role modeling, and I cannot stress the importance of strong role. I can only speak as a man, but role modeling as a man. Watch what you say, watch what you do. Everything matters. Nothing is easy. Nothing. It is simple, however. And I'll give you a bit of an example before I hand over to the others. A guy came to me and he said, my marriage is in tatters. Nick, while I was in the fire service, Nick, I just want to sit down, I just want to talk to you and so on. And I said to him, you know, he spilled his heart, and I said, you're an alcoholic, you drink too much, stop drinking. And that's all I said. Because, and now I'm not saying there wasn't a raft of other problems, and I'm not saying that there wasn't a long chain, a causal chain winding right back into his childhood. I get it. But I'm not a psychologist. And I said, you drink, it's a problem with you, you have to stop, and so on. So all I'm saying is that the answers not necessarily are, it's not easy. It is not easy, but it is simple. What ails us sometimes, but role modeling is critically important. Thoughts?
Yeah, Ian.
Can I just support that? So I did a lot of mentoring in high school, mentored tens of young guys. In virtually every one of those family situations, the guy came from a really hard family background. Invariably, no positive male role model, and it's sad with the increased single parents, broken relationships, that there's many of these guys just haven't had anyone, a positive male person in their life growing up. Back to the question, I guess the thing where I learned, we had our first 3 kids in the first 4 years of marriage, and my wife looked after the kids. I thought I had the real job and was chasing a corporate career. And it was only years later I started looking after grandkids. We've got grandchild number 11 underway. And I then suddenly realized how hard it is looking after kids. And you know, and if you're tired, I can't imagine. One of my daughters was in tears yesterday, a young baby, and is just not sleeping, and she's just not getting any sleep at all. And I realized how self-centered I was and ignorant of how hard the job was. I've apologized to my wife many times, and I guess coming back to Elise mentioned Brene Brown, one of the great videos I've seen, we show this in our courses around vulnerability, and I've seen the power. It made the best thing. If I could teach any man anything, it'd be the power of vulnerability, and to get rid of the facade, get rid of this shame that they feel because they're not living up to this ridiculous expectation that's put on them. and to do that. So I get, hopefully my family, my 3 sons-in-law and my son see this and see that, I guess, the role model that this, Dad was not always the best dad, but this is where he's at now, and I encourage him down that path. That's been my experience.
Excellent. Elise.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing all that, a lot of wisdom in there. So I grew up with a lot of mental, physical abuse and all of this stuff. So I was in a space of being in fight or flight a lot of my life, fight or flight, constant. That resulted in me seeing everything through the eyes of fear. And all my relationships, I basically had my guard up and I was screening everybody for what's a threat. I was constantly in the mindset of wanting to disqualify people. I was avoidant attached, and I was looking for a reason to justify wanting to retract and everyone around me being wrong. And what I can offer is the most powerful thing that I did for myself, which means I show up in life with far more dignity and respect for anyone else, is I prioritized my healing. I took radical self-responsibility. I didn't blame, shame my parents or anyone for when I went through. I took responsibility to create a new ending. So I went in and I found the tools to neutralize the traumas, to bring myself to secure attachment within myself, so that I then could be that secure, confident person that could show up as love. Because judgment, not giving people dignity and respect, is essentially fear. It's a fear-based thing. When you're in fear, you will see other people as fearful and you will treat them in a way that they are a threat. When you come back to a trust and a love within yourself, which comes from healing and taking full responsibility for the results in your life, you show up as love. You are love. And if you've got addictions, things like that, you'll find the more that you actually heal what's going on within you, that subsides. But you can't just muscle it. You've got to go in and find the things that are actually going to neutralize the traumas and help to start calming down and getting yourself into a mindset of parasympathetic nervous system, of calm, because you can't actually access the creative center of your brain, your prefrontal cortex. You can't actually access voluntary behavior if you're constantly in the lower parts of the brain, if you're constantly in fight or flight. And abusive behavior, knee-jerk, attacking people, violence comes from when you're in involuntary action. So if you want to get to the space where you can respond instead of react, you can choose your reactions, you want to get into your prefrontal cortex, then you need to start calming your fight or flight response by doing the healing and doing the things that neutralize those parts of the brain, so that you can then choose and respond to life and choose respect and choose dignity. And that is the greatest lesson that I have learned, was having the moment where I decided I can't rewrite the beginning, but I can certainly change the ending, and taking full responsibility for how I was showing up in the world is the most powerful thing I've done for myself.
Excellent. So I love what you've all said, because it all connects as well. It's like what Elise has been talking about, and where she started with this, that was from the role modeling she was getting at the time. Like you were saying, Nick, that it's not what we say, it's what we do that has a massive impact. A father's role for his daughter, she's going to be looking at father to understand what men are like, and to have an idea, and watching the interaction with the father and the mother to know what married life is going to be like for her, what she can expect. And she will gauge that as being, if it's a lousy relationship, that's what she's thinking that she's got coming to her. And so that's going to be against her as well. And so, and for the boy, well, dad's his first hero. So if you want your son to grow up the right way, be the best damn hero you can possibly be. And as you've said, Ian, in your case, being at work and everything else, you had your importance and everything else, but there are so many men right now who don't have jobs. And so they feel surplus to needs. It's almost like they were nothing more than a sperm donor. That's the way they're thinking. And so they're now in that state of, well, I don't know what my life, I've got no self-importance. If they don't have that, they don't have respect for themselves, they can't have it for anybody else. But to realize what impact they can have as the father, both as a husband, first of all, the partner coming up to the birth, during the birth, how they can be supportive. And then after that, in the next 9 months in particular, with the newborn, and the role they can play in there, the support they can be to their partner. And that, in all of that, as you were saying before, Elise, they're very vulnerable in that state, but the power they feel in that vulnerability. You know, all the men who are going, well, all I've got is my job and I haven't got that anymore. Well, now they've got this realization of the role and knowing, as Nick had said, what they're going to become as their children are growing up as well. They have an importance from not just providing the sperm, but all the way through to how that child's going to grow up into adulthood.
Yep.
It's such a big connection between it all. I've got a feeling this conversation and that we could probably keep talking for quite a bit of time, but I'm always mindful of the time that we have. I'd like to very much thank all of you for being here today. Thank you very much, Elise and Nick and Ian, for being here and to sharing the wisdom today. It's been brilliant.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much to all of you and for the opportunity. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks, Elise. Thanks, Nick. Been great.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Alan. It's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun and a lot of wisdom learned.
Thank you. And thanks for sharing, guys. And for everybody who's listening in, I hope you get a lot out of it. And remember, you can always get to all of these people. Their what do you call it, Facebook pages are there on the posts. Get in touch with them because I'm sure, put a hand up, you're all willing to be open to anybody who needs some information.
No problem at all.
Yeah. Everybody who's on these panel discussions of sharing their wisdom because they've learned it. And as Elise said before, we want to be of service. So to everyone who's listening, you want the best you can get out of everything. There's plenty of people on the panels right across the board, 85 panels so far. So there's plenty of wisdom and a lot of good people there. So again, guys, thanks for being here. And to everybody who's been watching today, we'll see you on the next Campfire Project. Bye for now.
So much. Bye-bye.